What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. So guys, the NFL playoffs officially start tomorrow. At the time of making this video, it is Friday, and the playoffs are going to kick off with Super Wildcard Weekend this weekend, starting tomorrow on Saturday, which means we have just a little bit of time to make some PrizePicks content for you all for the first time, because I've recently been getting into playing PrizePicks. I feel like it's becoming more and more popular. A lot of you might be playing it. In case you didn't know, PrizePicks is essentially a type of sports betting where you bet on individual player parlays, on them going either over or under their projected stat line. So that's what we're going to be doing for this video, guys. Before Super Wildcard Weekend kicks off, I'm going to be playing some PrizePicks for basically every game this weekend. So that's what this video is going to be about. We're going to be doing a best bet, or in my opinion, some of my favorite parlays from every single wild card matchup this weekend. And definitely make sure you guys comment your opinions. Let me know what you like for this week's PrizePicks, this weekend's PrizePicks for the NFL. Now, let me just say first and foremost, I'm pretty awful at PrizePicks. I have been in a slump recently. I don't pretend like I'm that good at all, but I've been considering making PrizePicks and best bet type content for you guys because I feel like it's a lot of fun just to talk about it, discuss it, and come back and see how our predictions did. So that's what we're going to be doing starting this video, and maybe in the future with the remaining NFL postseason games and weekends to come, as well as the NBA and maybe baseball down the road. But regardless, guys, here are some of my best bets from every single game, just in my opinion, of this Super Wildcard Weekend in the NFL. Okay, guys, so we're going to start with the Browns and Texans game. I'm going to go in the order of the kickoff times of these games. So we're going to start with the first game, Browns and Texans. What do I like? I'm going to start with the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns, the new old quarterback, Joe Flacco. I'm going to have him go over 272.5 passing yards. The reason why I like this is because he has gone over 300 passing yards the last 4 games he has started. The Texans have the 23rd ranked pass defense in terms of yards allowed, so it's not exactly a dangerous pass defense. And let's not forget, just 3 weeks ago, Joe Flacco absolutely lit up this Texans secondary in a 36-22 win. He had 368 yards, and let's not forget to mention that Amari Cooper himself had 265 yards receiving, which is why I'm going to go over for Joe Flacco, and I'm also going to go over for Amari Cooper. I believe his normal over-under for this week is 76.5 receiving yards. I have no reason to believe why this newly revamped, heavily pass-first Browns offense, with Joe Flacco and Amari Cooper being absolutely incredible the last handful of weeks, I have no reason to believe why this won't be their game plan against a Texans secondary that's been up and down and isn't really super fearful, doesn't draw too much fear in the eyes of defensive passing attacks. So I'm going to go with the over on both of these guys. I think they get more than their projections. And then for the Texans, I want to try to get at least one player on every team, and I generally like to go with the overs. So I'm just going to go with CJ Stroud to go over 244.5 passing yards. Now, obviously, the Browns have a very good defense. They actually have the #1 pass defense in terms of yards allowed, but CJ Stroud has gone over in his passing projections in something like 4 of his last 6 starts, and his only last fully healthy start that he's gone under 244.5 passing yards was 2 weeks ago in his return from injury against the Titans. So I think even though the Texans with Devin Singletary have established a pretty solid rushing attack, I still think their #1 way of operating is through their rookie QB, their star rookie QB in CJ Stroud. And maybe with a young team at home hosting their first playoff game with this new core, they might get a little bit excited at first. I could see the Browns kind of jumping off to a good start, and maybe the Texans needing a strong passing attack to come back in this game. They're going to rely on their best weapon, which is CJ Stroud, in a must-win game, obviously, with it being the playoffs. And they might be coming from behind, so I'm still going to go with CJ Stroud to go over because he gets a ton of passing yards. And when you're a great player, you're probably matchup proof against a Browns defense that is still great, but the last handful of weeks isn't as great in terms of defending the pass as they were a handful of weeks ago pre-Joe Flacco when they weren't airing the ball out as much. So I'm going to go with the over there. Then we're going to move on to Chiefs and Dolphins. I have 2 picks that I'm going to go with in this game that I like, and it's going to be from 2 future Hall of Famers on opposing sides who are familiar with each other, though. I'm going to go, despite his struggles, I'm going to go with the over on Travis Kelce's fantasy points. So we're going to clear the original entry. I'm going to go over on Travis Kelce's fantasy score. This is half point per reception, half PPR. I still think Travis Kelce will be very good in this game despite not finishing the season well and having his first non-1,000 yard season in the last 8 years. Travis Kelce, just in case you guys didn't know, is pretty great, but he's even better in the playoffs, especially recently. His last 6 playoff games, he's gone over this fantasy score. He's averaged 16.3 half PPR fantasy points over his last 6 playoff games. He's gotten at least 5 catches for 78 yards and a touchdown in 6 straight playoff games. And with the Chiefs at home in Arrowhead, where they're a lot more comfortable than the Dolphins, even still, I believe Travis Kelce will be part of the game plan, then obviously, but the biggest part of the game plan for the Chiefs. I think he'll find a way to get at least 15 fantasy points because playoff Kelce is absolutely real and super consistent and even better than he normally is in the regular season. So I still believe in playoff Kelce, and I said we were going to have 2 Hall of Famers. This might be ugly, guys, because the weather won't be great in this game, so I don't expect a ton of passing yards from Tyreek Hill, but what I do expect is him to be a huge security blanket for Tua and get over 6.5 receptions. Guys, it's his first game in Arrowhead Stadium. Coming back as a visitor, Tyreek Hill is going to be motivated to at least contribute something in this playoff game, and he averages almost 7.5 receptions a game. He's had 119 receptions in 16 games this year, and yes, he might not catch a ton of deep passes because the Dolphins on the road, Tua in that weather might be sub-zero or hovering around 0. I don't think they'll go deep a ton, but Tyreek Hill is one of the ultimate security blankets in the game, and he will be for Tua, as he's been the entire time he's been in Miami. So we could see a lot of checkdowns, short completions to arguably the best receiver in the game. I could easily see him going over 6.5 receptions, just out of the security blanket that he will be in this potentially ugly weather game. I really like him to go over 6.5 receptions. So that's my little 2-leg parlay for Chiefs Dolphins. We move on to the third game, which will be Bills and Steelers. I have another 2-leg parlay in this one. I'm going to go with James Cook to go over his 66.5 rushing yards. Actually, let me clear the previous game. I'm going to go with James Cook to go over his 66.5 rushing yards. As you can tell, like I mentioned, guys, I love betting on overs. I don't like betting on unders. I like rooting for players to succeed in sports. So I'm going to go with the over 66.5 rushing yards. The reason why is because this is another ugly game. We're talking about potentially 50-mile-per-hour winds in the Steelers-Bills game, and James Cook and overall the Bills have established their rushing attack a lot better in the last handful of weeks. James Cook is playing well. He's had a couple 100-yard games, so I like James Cook to go over in what could be an ugly game where passing might be limited, and this new Bills revamped team, they understand the importance of establishing the run. Without TJ Watt, I think the Bills will be up in this game. I think they'll be controlling the pace of the game. It'll be a positive game script for them. And the Steelers have an overall good defense in terms of points allowed, but their rushing defense is actually below average in rushing yards allowed. I like James Cook a lot this game. I like the running attack from the Bills in a snowy, probably snowy, freezing temperatures, high winds, 50-mile-an-hour winds potentially. I like James Cook there. And on the other side, speaking of security blankets, kind of like with the Tyreek Hill thing, this is not very generous for Deontay Johnson. I think having him at only 36.5 receiving yards is kind of low because he has more than doubled that the last 2 weeks with Mason Rudolph. I know it's a snow game, but that's why we could see a lot of checkdowns. He's kind of going to play the Tyreek Hill role for Mason Rudolph, kind of like how I see Tyreek Hill doing that for Tua Tagovailoa. So I'm going to go over 36.5 receiving yards for Deontay Johnson. He has destroyed that total the last 2 weeks, playing pretty well with Mason Rudolph. And I think, like I said, the Steelers, in my opinion, will be playing in a negative game script, playing from behind. So they're going to have to get some passing yards and receiving yards. And I think Deontay Johnson will get 37 in a negative game script despite the putrid passing weather for passing. So that's my Steelers and Bills parlay. Next up, we have Packers and Cowboys. Okay, so for the Packers, I like Jordan Love to go over 23, if I can find it, 23 completions. I like Jordan Love to go over that because in 5 of his last 6 games, he's really heated up. 5 of his last 6 games, he's had at least 24 completions, so he's had the over. The Dallas passing defense, yes, they get some interceptions and takeaways, but it's not great, and I don't think the Packers will be able to run the ball incredibly well against the Cowboys' rush defense. I think they're more of a pass-first team at this point with how well Jordan Love has played. I think this is another one of those situations where, like the Steelers, the 7 seed in the NFC, they will be playing from behind in Jerry World. They're going to have to keep up with the Cowboys, which will be tough, and I think the only way to do that is to pass the ball a lot more. So I just think out of sheer volume, which will come from necessity in this situation, I think Jordan Love will have to complete more passes to keep up with the Cowboys offense. And speaking of the Cowboys offense, the one guy I like to bet on the most in this game for the Cowboys is CeeDee Lamb to go over 100.5 receiving yards. It's definitely bold, but CeeDee Lamb is averaging more than that per game this year. He's had an absolutely monster season. He's so reliable, super consistent, and he had almost 100 yards last week, but the 2 weeks before that, he had way more than the 100.5 receiving yards. He's on an absolute tear. I would also consider betting his over on receptions. He's just playing incredibly well. I know Jair Alexander hurt himself in practice, but even if he plays, this Packers secondary has been torched a handful of times this year. It's not really scaring anyone. It's inconsistent. CeeDee Lamb can beat you in a million ways. So I still like CeeDee Lamb to be the number one option. They're going to run the game plan through CeeDee Lamb. Obviously, the Cowboys are. He's their number one weapon. No question about it. In a playoff game, I like CeeDee Lamb to get at least 101 receiving yards. So that is our Packers and Cowboys prize pick that I will be going with. And next, we have Lions-Rams. Now, this is the highest over-under, I believe, this week, and I think it's going to live up to that with a really high-volume passing game. So for that reason, I like the over with both quarterbacks. I like Matthew Stafford to go over his projected, I think it was 274. All right, so it's Matthew Stafford getting 275.5. I like him to go over that, and the reason why is he has gone over that in 4 of his last 5 games. He's really passing the ball well. This Lions secondary has not been good all year. It's pretty bottom barrel, low ranking, but especially the last 3 weeks, they're averaging over 350 passing yards per game allowed. It's been pretty putrid and torchable, so I think this is going to be a high scoring affair and a lot of passing on both sides. I definitely like Matthew Stafford to go over. I also like Jared Goff to go over, but before that, we're going to stay on the Rams side, and we're going to go with Cooper Kupp to go over 71.5 receiving yards because he hasn't done that the last 2 weeks, but the 2 weeks before he went over 100 yards, and it's Cooper Kupp. You're going to go with your veterans who have been there, and we know how great Cooper Kupp has been in the playoffs. The last time we saw him in the playoffs, he was just destroying the league in those 4 playoff games on the way to winning a Super Bowl MVP. He's an absolute beast in the playoffs. So I really like him being due to go over 71.5 receiving yards with his history in the postseason, averaging over 100 receiving yards per game in his playoff career. I really like him to go over. And maybe Puka Nacua to go over, but I just like Cooper Kupp's over even more. And I'm going to go last but not least with Jared Goff, who is projected to have 260.5, or that's the over-under. I like Jared Goff to also go over that. And let's see, where's he? Oh, we're going to have to drag down a little bit. Okay, so we're going to go Jared Goff over 260.5 because the Rams also don't have a good pass defense in terms of yards allowed or just anything involving pass defense. The Rams don't exactly have Jalen Ramsey back there and an elite secondary from 2 years ago like they might have had in the past. So because of that, and the fact that the Lions, even though they're still a very good rushing team, they have not rushed the ball as well in the last handful of weeks. They've actually needed to air it out a little more. Jared Goff has gone over 260.5 passing yards in 3 of his last 4 contests, and I think they'll need to do that in order to keep up with the Rams passing. I just see a pass-first game on both sides. These are 2 very questionable passing defenses, and this will be a great game. Highest over-under this week. Both teams, I think we could have an absolute shootout in that game. So I like that little 3-leg parlay. All right, so last but not least, guys, we have Bucks and Eagles on Monday night. We're going to start with the Buccaneers side of things. I like Baker Mayfield to go over 234 34.5 passing yards because he averages more than that per game this year. He's been very solid. He didn't get that last week. He really struggled, albeit in a winning effort against the Panthers. But guys, let's talk about the obvious. The Eagles have a very torchable secondary. It's pretty awful. Come on, the Eagles have not been playing well whatsoever in basically any aspect of their game, but their secondary is probably their biggest problem. They allow a ton of yards. They get torched a lot. Lots of big plays. Baker Mayfield already averages more than 234.5 on the season, and with last week him not doing so well, but the previous 3 before that, he got at least 280 passing. I really like Baker at home in Tampa. Baker to go over his passing projection against the Eagles secondary, which is not scaring anyone whatsoever. And speaking of their secondary, Mike Evans is going to be a problem as well. This is an easy over for me, 68.5. Mike Evans is averaging over 73 yards per game this season. He's had a great year, and usually if Baker Mayfield's playing well, he has established Mike Evans as his #1 receiver. I could see both of them doing very well against the horrible momentum that the Eagles have right now. So I think the Buccaneers will do pretty well passing the ball in this game, so that's why I like the over on these two. And then for the Eagles, it's been a mess. I mean, Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, I checked earlier. I don't even think PrizePicks has their over-unders out yet because they're not 100% confirmed to play. I really do think both of them will play, and I would have considered maybe betting on them. I don't know because they've been extremely inconsistent and unpredictable, but I'm going to show some love to their running back, DeAndre Swift. I'm going to project him to go over his 59.5 rushing yards, even though Tampa Bay has a pretty good rushing defense. Actually, they have a top 5 rushing defense in terms of yards allowed. DeAndre Swift has gone over 59.5 rushing yards his last 3 games, and with the Eagles having a lot of turnovers, Jalen Hurts throwing a lot of interceptions, especially recently, I think in a playoff game, the Eagles will try to eliminate as many mistakes as possible, and it'll start with trying to establish the running game again. So I think DeAndre Swift will have a solid floor in this game, probably get a good amount of volume, and get at least 60 rushing yards, which he has done the last 3 weeks. So guys, that's my parlay for the final game. Definitely let me know your opinions. I had a lot of fun making my first PrizePicks video. We could see some more PrizePicks videos in the future. I'm excited about that. Let me know your PrizePicks for this week, who you like to go over, under. I love betting overs. I think it's more fun, so I think I only went with overs in this video. Comment your opinions, guys. Let me know. Like the video if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you love sports and you maybe want to see some more PrizePicks videos in the future. I hope you guys have as much fun watching the NFL playoffs as I know I'm going to. Starting tomorrow, definitely going to be glued to the TV. So definitely let me know your opinions, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all, of course, in the next one.